What happens when your children are not trying to hurt you, but every kind thing they do makes you feel smaller? Evelyn Price had asked herself that question more than once, though never out loud. Her son called it planning. Her daughter called it being realistic. They talked about safety, repairs, insurance, memory, and the future. They said the house was becoming too much. Maybe they were right in some ways. Evelyn had forgotten a doctor's appointment. She had misplaced a tax notice. Once, she had stood in a grocery store parking lot and needed a full minute to remember where she had parked. But the house was not just a house to her. It was the last place where she still felt like herself. So when her children began discussing what should happen next, Evelyn began writing everything down in a blue spiral notebook, because she was afraid one day her own words would be the only proof she still had a voice. The notebook sat on the kitchen counter beside a white ceramic mug that said, "World's Best Nurse," in faded blue letters. Her daughter Karen had bought it for her years ago, back when Evelyn retired from Clearwater Memorial Hospital, and everyone still came down to Florida for a long weekend with cake, balloons, and too many photos in the backyard. The mug had a tiny chip near the handle now. Evelyn still used it every morning. She lived in a one-story house in Clearwater, 15 minutes from the Gulf if traffic was light. Pale blue shutters framed the front windows. A hibiscus bush leaned near the mailbox, blooming bright red in the heat. The screened porch faced west, and in the evenings, when the sun dropped behind the roofs across the street, the room turned orange for a few quiet minutes. That was where Thomas used to sit. Even 6 years after his death, Evelyn still thought of the porch as his place. His old fishing cap hung on a hook in the garage. His reading glasses sat in the drawer of the side table, even though she had no reason to keep them there. Sometimes, when the ceiling fan clicked above her head, she could almost hear him clear his throat before saying something small and ordinary. "Lock the back door, Ev. Storm's coming in. This place is paid for. Nobody can push us out now." That last sentence had stayed with her longer than she expected. Thomas had said it the month they made the final mortgage payment. Evelyn had come home from a 12-hour shift with sore feet and a headache, and he had been standing in the kitchen with the envelope in his hand, smiling like a man who had just won something. They did not celebrate with champagne or a fancy dinner. Thomas grilled chicken in the backyard, and Evelyn made potato salad. They ate on paper plates because she was too tired to wash dishes. Still, it had felt like a victory. This house had not come easily. Evelyn had worked holidays, double shifts, and nights when her children had fevers. She had changed bandages on strangers, held hands in recovery rooms, and comforted families who were trying not to cry in hospital hallways. She had come home to laundry, school forms, scraped knees, and bills stacked beside the toaster. Thomas worked for the county water department, steady but never rich. Together, they paid for that house 1 month at a time. Now, Michael talked about it like it was an asset. He did not mean to sound cold. Evelyn knew that. Michael lived in New Jersey, wore pressed shirts even on video calls, and spoke in the careful tone of a man used to explaining numbers to people. He was 48, successful, busy, and always looking 3 steps ahead. When he called, he usually started with, "Hey, Mom, you got a minute?" But somehow the minute always became a list. "Have you looked at your insurance renewal? Did you get someone to check the roof? Mom, property values are strong right now. It wouldn't hurt to know your options." Options. Evelyn had started to hate that word. Karen was different. Karen lived outside Atlanta with a husband, 2 teenagers, and a job as an assistant principal at a middle school that seemed to drain the life out of her by Thursday afternoon. Karen called more often than Michael, but she was usually doing 3 things at once. Evelyn could hear dishes clinking, car doors shutting, a dog barking, a student's parent calling on the other line. "Mom, I'm not trying to push," Karen would say, though her voice always sounded tired enough to break. "I just worry about you being down there alone." "I'm not alone," Evelyn would answer. Then she would look around the kitchen after hanging up and see exactly how alone she was. The house made its own noises now. The refrigerator hummed. The air conditioner clicked on and off. Sprinklers tapped against the side windows at 6 every morning because Thomas had set the timer years ago and Evelyn had never changed it. The television stayed on too often, not because she watched it, but because silence had a way of spreading through the rooms if she let it. Across the street, Ruth Delgado noticed more than most people. Ruth was 78, widowed, and still moved through the neighborhood like a librarian who expected everyone to return things on time. She brought Evelyn banana bread twice a month and always stayed long enough to ask one real question. One Tuesday morning, Ruth found Evelyn standing by the mailbox with her phone in her hand. "You all right?" Ruth asked. Evelyn looked up too quickly. "Yes, fine." Ruth glanced at the phone, but did not ask. Michael had sent a link. Just a link, with one short message under it. "Just something to think about, Mom." When Evelyn tapped it, a real estate website opened with a large number at the top of the screen. Her house had been estimated down to the dollar, as if a place could be measured without counting the years inside it. She stood by the hibiscus bush and stared at that number until the screen went dark. "Kids?" Ruth asked softly. Evelyn locked the phone and slipped it into her pocket. "Just Michael being Michael." Ruth nodded, but her eyes stayed kind. "That can mean a lot of things." Evelyn almost laughed. Instead, she reached into the mailbox and pulled out a grocery flyer, a medical bill, and a postcard from a dental office she no longer used. No letter from Michael, no card from Karen, nothing from Sophie, her granddaughter, though Evelyn knew teenagers did not write postcards. Still, each morning she checked. Back inside, Evelyn laid the mail beside the notebook. She meant to make coffee. She meant to toast half an English muffin. Instead, she opened the notebook to a clean page and wrote the date. Then she wrote, "Michael sent house estimate before asking how I was." She looked at the sentence for a long time. It felt petty written there in blue ink. It felt like something a lonely old woman would write when she had too much time and too few visitors. She almost tore the page out, but she did not, because the words were true. For the rest of that morning, Evelyn kept glancing at the notebook as if it had said something back to her. She rinsed her mug, she wiped the counter, she folded the grocery flyer and put it in the recycling bin, then took it back out because eggs were on sale and she did not like wasting a coupon. Every small task felt normal until her eyes landed on that sentence again. Michael sent house estimate before asking how I was. By noon, she had convinced herself she was being too sensitive. Michael had always been practical. Even as a boy, he had lined up his toy cars by color and size. And when his father asked him what he wanted for his birthday, Michael once said, "A savings bond," because he had heard Evelyn and Thomas talking about college money at the kitchen table. He had not meant to hurt her. That was the trouble with hurt like that. It came wrapped in concern, tied neatly with good intentions. Around 3, Karen called while Evelyn was trimming brown leaves off the hibiscus near the front walk. "Hi, Mom. You busy?" Evelyn tucked the phone between her shoulder and ear. "Just outside for a minute." "Oh, good. Listen, did Michael send you that house thing?" Evelyn looked toward the mailbox, though she did not know why. "He sent a link. He asked me to talk to you before you got upset." "I'm not upset." There was a pause on Karen's end. Evelyn could hear traffic, then the clicking sound of a turn signal. "Mom," Karen said softer now, "nobody's saying you have to do anything tomorrow." "That's comforting." "I'm serious." "So am I." Karen sighed, and the sound carried more exhaustion than anger. "It's just a conversation. Houses in your neighborhood are selling fast. And you've said yourself the yard is getting harder." "I said the weeds were rude. That's not the same thing." Karen gave a small, tired laugh, but it faded quickly. "I worry about you." "I know. You say that, but every time we bring up help, you act like we're trying to put you in a home." Evelyn clipped one dead leaf and watched it fall onto the mulch. "Are you?" "No, not like that." "Then, like what?" Another pause. This one lasted long enough for Evelyn to hear a horn somewhere near Karen. Like maybe there are places where you wouldn't have to handle everything by yourself, Karen said. Places with people around. Transportation, maintenance, someone nearby if something happened. Evelyn closed the pruning shears slowly. The Florida heat pressed against her neck. Something is always about to happen when you get old, she said. Mom. No, it's true. Everyone starts talking like your life is a hallway with a wet floor sign at the end of it. Karen did not answer right away. When she did, her voice was lower. I'm not trying to scare you. Then don't. The call ended politely. That was how their family did things. Nobody slammed phones down. Nobody cursed. Nobody said the cruelest thing directly. They said, we'll talk later, and I love you, and then carried the bruise around for the rest of the day. Evelyn went back inside, washed her hands, and opened the notebook. Karen says places with people around. Not a home. Not like that. She underlined not like that once, then closed the notebook before she could add anything else. That evening, she heated a bowl of chicken soup and ate it at the kitchen table while the local news talked about storms building over the Gulf. The chair across from her stayed empty. Thomas's chair. She had once thought about moving it to the garage, but the idea made her feel mean, as if a chair could be abandoned too. After dinner, she sorted her medication for the week. She had done it every Sunday night for years, even though this was Wednesday. The little plastic pill organizer clicked open and shut under her fingers. Blood pressure pill, calcium, vitamin D, one small white tablet she always had to double check because it looked too much like another one. She was halfway through when the phone rang again. This time it was Sophie. Hi, Grandma. Evelyn straightened a little without meaning to. Well, there's my girl. Sophie was 17 and spoke in the careful way of someone who felt more than she said. She had Karen's eyes, but Thomas's quietness. Evelyn loved that about her. Mom said she talked to you, Sophie said. Evelyn looked down at the open pill organizer. Did she? Yeah, she seems stressed. She usually is. That's true. Evelyn smiled. How's school? Sophie groaned. Don't ask. That bad? Graduation stuff, college emails, everybody acting like I'm supposed to know who I am for the next 40 years. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. Nobody knows who they are for the next 40 years. Most people are guessing and wearing nicer shoes. Sophie laughed, and for a moment, the kitchen felt less empty. They talked about school, a history teacher Sophie liked, and a boy she said was, not a boyfriend, Grandma, don't make it weird. Evelyn promised she would not make it weird, then immediately asked if he had good manners. Sophie laughed again. Before hanging up, Sophie went quiet. Grandma? Yes, honey. Do you want to sell the house? The question landed differently from Michael's link and Karen's careful concern. It had no plan attached to it. No pressure. No brochure hiding behind it. Sophie simply asked. Evelyn looked toward the screened porch, where the evening had turned the windows dark. No, she said. Then, after a moment, not right now. Did you tell them that? I believe I did. Sophie was quiet. Sometimes adults hear words, but not the part underneath. Evelyn blinked. When did you get so smart? I'm not. I just listen better when nobody thinks I'm listening. After they hung up, Evelyn sat with the phone in her hand. The house felt different after that call. Not fixed, not safe exactly, just witnessed. She stood to put away the pill organizer, then stopped. The Wednesday compartment was still open. For a few seconds, she could not remember if she had already taken the evening pill or only placed it there. She stared at the small tablet resting in the plastic square. Her nurse's mind told her not to guess. Never guess with medication. That rule had been drilled into her so deeply she could hear an old supervisor's voice saying it. Evelyn carried the organizer to the counter, opened the notebook, and wrote, Not sure if I took Wednesday evening pill. Do not guess. Then she sat down again, suddenly tired in a way she did not want anyone to see. Outside, the sprinklers clicked on, even though rain was coming. By Thursday morning, Evelyn had decided not to tell anyone about the pill. She told herself it was nothing. People forgot things. People walked into rooms and forgot why they were there. People misplaced glasses that were sitting on top of their heads. It did not mean their children got to sell their homes and move them like furniture. Still, she stood at the counter longer than usual, staring at the pill organizer before breakfast. The Wednesday evening compartment was empty now because she had left it that way. She had not taken the tablet. She had made that decision because guessing was unsafe, and Evelyn Price had spent too many years correcting patients who guessed with medication. The problem was that making the right decision did not make her feel better. She wrote it down again, smaller this time, near the bottom of the page. Skip pill because uncertain. Tell doctor if repeated. Then she closed the notebook and placed the world's best nurse mug on top of it, as if covering the words made them less real. At 10, Ruth came over with banana bread wrapped in foil and a look on her face that said she knew better than to believe every "I'm fine." "You want coffee?" Evelyn asked. "Only if you're having some." "That means yes." They sat at the small kitchen table where the morning light came through the blinds in narrow stripes. Ruth noticed the notebook right away. She always noticed books, even cheap spiral ones from the drugstore. "Keeping a diary?" Ruth asked. "Lists. Lists can turn into diaries if you live long enough." Evelyn cut 2 slices of banana bread and set them on paper napkins. "You always say things like that?" "Only when people are hiding something obvious." Evelyn gave her a look. Ruth smiled, unbothered. For a while they talked about ordinary things. A neighbor's sprinkler had been running into the street. The grocery store had rearranged the soup aisle again. Someone's grandson had backed into a mailbox 2 streets over and left a dent shaped like Ohio. Then Ruth said, "Michael still pushing?" "He calls it helping." Same suitcase, different tag. Evelyn looked down at her coffee. Karen too, not pushing exactly, worrying. Children worry louder once they live far away. That made Evelyn pause. Ruth had a way of saying things that did not excuse anyone, but made the room wider around the pain. "They think I can't handle the house," Evelyn said. "Can you?" Evelyn's eyes lifted. Ruth did not look sorry for asking. She simply held her mug with both hands and waited. "I paid for it," Evelyn said. "That's not what I asked." The refrigerator hummed between them. Outside, a lawnmower started somewhere down the block. Evelyn pressed her thumb against the edge of the napkin until it folded over. She wanted to say yes. She wanted the word to come clean and sharp, the way it would have years ago. "Yes, of course. Don't be ridiculous." She was not some helpless woman waiting to be rescued. She could still drive, still cook, still balance her checkbook most months, still remember which neighbor had knee surgery and which pharmacy had shorter lines. But her eyes moved toward the hallway, where she had stacked 2 boxes of old Christmas decorations 3 weeks earlier and still had not carried them to the garage because they seemed heavier each time she passed them. "I can handle most of it," Evelyn said. Ruth nodded slowly. "That's an honest answer." "It doesn't feel like one." "It rarely does." After Ruth left, Evelyn stood at the sink and watched her cross the street with the empty foil folded under one arm. Ruth moved slowly but surely, one hand raised to shield her eyes from the sun. Evelyn found herself envying that kind of slowness. Ruth did not seem ashamed of it. The phone rang just before lunch. Michael again. "Hey, Mom, got a minute?" There it was, the sentence that always carried more than a minute inside it. "I'm making lunch," Evelyn said. "I won't keep you." That was almost never true. He asked about her roof first, then the air conditioner. Then, whether she had gotten someone to look at the bathroom grab bars he had mentioned last month. "I don't need grab bars," she said. "Mom, they're not an insult. They're just practical." "I know what they are, Michael. I'm trying to prevent a fall." "I haven't fallen." "Not yet." The words came out too fast. Michael seemed to realize it as soon as he said them, because he went quiet. Evelyn stared at the wall above the sink, where a small framed photo showed her and Thomas standing on the beach at sunset. Thomas had one arm around her shoulders, his cap low over his forehead. She remembered that day. Karen had taken the picture. Michael had been on his phone. Not yet, Evelyn repeated. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? He sighed. I mean, we don't have to wait for an emergency to make smart decisions. We. What? You said we. Because it affects all of us. There it was, the part he probably believed was loving, the part that made Evelyn feel like her life had become a family project. My house affects me first, she said. Of course it does. But not only me. Is that what you're saying? Mom, come on. She could hear him moving around on the other end, papers shifting, maybe a keyboard. He was probably at work, fitting her between appointments. A mother placed neatly between clients. I just think, Michael said, we need to look at this before you're forced into a decision. Evelyn looked toward the notebook under the mug. And who would force me? That's not what I meant. You keep saying that. Another silence. When the call ended, Evelyn did not write immediately. She made herself a turkey sandwich, though she only ate half. She washed the plate, dried it, and put it away. Then she opened the notebook. Michael said, Not yet. Emergency. We need to look at this. She tapped the pen against the page. Then she added, My house affects me first. That evening, rain moved in from the Gulf. It came hard and sudden, beating against the roof and turning the street silver. Evelyn sat on the screened porch with a light blanket across her knees, listening to the storm and watching water drip from the edge of the gutter Thomas had meant to replace before he got sick. Her tablet rang on the side table. A video call. Karen's face appeared first, tired and too close to the screen. Then Michael joined from what looked like his office. Evelyn could see a framed diploma behind him. Hi, Mom, Karen said. Two of you at once, Evelyn said. Should I be worried? Karen gave a small smile that did not last. Michael leaned forward. We just wanted to talk together so nobody feels like things are being said separately. Evelyn's hand moved toward the notebook on the porch table. She had brought it outside without quite admitting why. The rain filled the pause. We were thinking, Karen began. Michael glanced down, maybe at notes. And for the first time that week, Evelyn understood that her children had already had conversations about her before this one. Maybe many of them. Maybe while she was making soup, checking the mailbox, folding towels, trying to remember pills. They had talked in private, compared worries, made plans, softened phrases, decided who would say what. She was not surprised. That was what hurt. We're not trying to gang up on you, Karen said. That was the first thing out of her mouth, and somehow it made Evelyn feel exactly ganged up on. Michael adjusted something on his desk. His picture froze for half a second, then came back sharper. Mom, we just want to be on the same page. Evelyn looked at both of their faces on the tablet. Karen in her kitchen outside Atlanta, still wearing her work blouse, hair pulled back too tight. Michael in his office in New Jersey, a glass wall behind him, and a pen in his hand like he was about to guide someone through a contract. They were her children. She had held them with fevers, packed their lunches, waited up for them when they were late, and sat in bleachers, auditoriums, and doctor's offices for half her life. Now they were two small boxes on a screen, trying to sound gentle while preparing her for something she did not want. What page is that? Evelyn asked. Karen's eyes flicked away from the camera. Michael answered. A realistic one. Evelyn picked up her pen but did not open the notebook yet. That word again. Mom. No, go ahead. Karen leaned closer. The house is a lot. The insurance, the upkeep, the yard, the storm prep. You shouldn't have to be worrying about hurricane shutters by yourself. I have neighbors. Neighbors aren't family. Evelyn almost said, sometimes they call more often. But she swallowed it. Some sentences could not be taken back once they entered the room. Michael cleared his throat. We looked at a few communities near you. Not nursing homes. Nothing like that. Independent living. You'd have your own space, meals if you wanted them, transportation, maintenance, activities. Activities? Evelyn repeated. Karen winced. Mom, don't do that. Do what? Make it sound ridiculous before we even talk about it. Evelyn looked toward the dark porch screen. Rainwater ran down in thin lines. Somewhere across the street, Ruth's porch light glowed yellow through the storm. Michael said, "No one is saying you have to decide tonight. But there are waiting lists. And if you sell while the market is good, you'd have more control." Evelyn's hand tightened around the pen. "You keep using that word like you're handing it to me." "What word?" "Control." Michael blinked. Karen rubbed her forehead. "We're trying to help you keep control, Mom. That's the whole point." Evelyn opened the notebook then. The sound of the cover bending back was small, but both children noticed. She wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Under it, she wrote, "Michael and Karen called together. Already looked at places." "What are you writing?" Michael asked. "Notes." "About what?" "About this conversation." Karen's face changed. "Mom, why?" "So I remember it correctly." The words hung there. Michael's expression softened in a way Evelyn hated, because it was the same look doctors gave families in hospital hallways before lowering their voices. "Mom," he said carefully, "that's actually part of what concerns us." There it was. The notebook, which had felt like a shield in her hands, suddenly became evidence against her. "I took notes for 40 years, Evelyn said. Charts, medication times, wound changes, blood pressure readings. Nobody worried about my mind then." "That's different," Michael said. "Because I was useful then?" Karen looked hurt. "That's not fair." "No," Evelyn said quietly. "It probably isn't." For a moment, nobody spoke. The rain softened, then picked back up hard enough to drown the little click of the porch fan. Karen took a breath. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to get mad." Evelyn almost smiled. "That was what people said right before giving you something to be mad about." "What is it?" Karen looked down, then back at the camera. "When I was there in March, after Sophie's spring break, we went to Publix. Do you remember?" "Of course I remember." "You went back out to the parking lot while I was checking out because you said you forgot something in the car." Evelyn's mouth went dry. "I found you near the wrong row," Karen said. "You were standing there holding your keys, and you looked scared." Evelyn stared at her daughter's face. Michael turned slightly toward his screen. "Karen told me." "Of course she did," Evelyn said. "Mom, I didn't tell him to betray you," Karen said. "I told him because I was worried. I wasn't lost. You didn't know where the car was." For a minute, it was almost 10 minutes. Evelyn felt the number strike harder than it should have. 10 minutes sounded official. 10 minutes sounded like decline. 10 minutes sounded like the kind of thing people put in a file. "I found it," Evelyn said. "I found you," Karen replied, and then immediately looked sorry. The silence after that was worse than shouting. Evelyn closed the notebook halfway, then opened it again because closing it felt like surrender. She wrote, "Karen told Michael about Publix. Says 10 minutes. Her handwriting looks smaller than usual." Michael's voice came softer. "Mom, we're not trying to take your life away." Evelyn looked at him then. "Then why does it feel like you already started dividing it into pieces?" Karen's eyes filled, but she did not cry. Michael leaned back in his chair and looked tired, not cruel. That was the part Evelyn did not know how to fight. If they had been cruel, she could have hated them. But they were worried, and worry had a way of entering a house without knocking. "We thought," Karen said, "if we talked through options now, it would be less scary later." "For whom?" Karen had no answer. Michael looked down at his pen. "For all of us." Evelyn nodded slowly. She looked around the porch, at Thomas's empty chair, at the wet blur of the street, at the small table where the notebook lay open like a chart nobody wanted to read. "I'm tired," she said. Karen's face tightened. "Mom, I said I'm tired. That still gets to mean the conversation is over." Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. Karen nodded. once. After the call ended, Evelyn sat in the glow of the tablet screen until it went black. The porch seemed larger without their faces in it. The rain had slowed to a whisper. She looked down at the notebook and wrote one more sentence. They are worried I am disappearing, so they have started speaking like I am already gone. Then she set the pen down and pressed both hands flat on the page, as if she could hold herself in place by touching her own words. The next morning, Evelyn woke before the sprinklers came on. For a few seconds, she stayed still in bed, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the distant sound of a garbage truck turning onto the next street. The room was pale blue with early light. Thomas's side of the bed had not been slept in for 6 years, but she still kept the quilt pulled evenly across it, as if neatness could cover absence. Her first thought was the notebook. Not coffee, not breakfast, not the weather, the notebook. She did not like that. She did not like how quickly it had become part of her breathing, part of the way she checked herself against the day. But when she walked into the kitchen and saw it lying open on the counter, she felt a small, private relief, like finding her purse still where she had left it. She read the last sentence from the night before. They are worried I am disappearing, so they have started speaking like I am already gone. In the morning light, the sentence looked dramatic, almost embarrassing. Evelyn stood over it in her slippers, arms folded across her robe. You're getting carried away, she whispered to herself. But she did not cross it out. Around 9, Karen called. Evelyn let it ring twice before answering. Mom? I'm here. Karen sounded careful. Are you upset with me? Evelyn looked at the hibiscus outside the window. I was upset yesterday. That's not what I asked. The honesty in Karen's voice made Evelyn pause. I don't know, Evelyn said. Karen exhaled softly. I didn't want to bring up Publix like that, but you did. I know. And you told Michael. I was scared. Evelyn pressed her fingers against the edge of the counter. I was scared too, Karen, that day. I just didn't need it turned into evidence. It wasn't evidence. It sure felt like it. Karen went quiet, and Evelyn could hear a muffled voice in the background, probably one of the kids asking where something was. Karen covered the phone for a moment. When she came back, she sounded even more tired. Mom, Sophie and I were already planning to come down for her long weekend next month. I'm thinking maybe we should come sooner. Evelyn stiffened. Why? To visit. That's not an answer. It is an answer. Karen. Another silence. Then Karen said, to visit and talk in person. Evelyn looked at the notebook. Is Michael coming too? He said he could fly in Saturday. Evelyn laughed once, without humor. So that's what this is. No, it's not some ambush. People keep telling me what things are not. Karen's voice cracked a little. I don't know how to do this right. That stopped Evelyn more than any argument could have. For a moment, she saw Karen at 8 years old, standing in the hallway with a spelling test in her hand, angry because she had missed one word and convinced herself she had failed. Karen had always been that way, trying hard, carrying too much, breaking only in private. Evelyn softened, but only a little. Come if you want to come, she said. But don't come with decisions already made. We won't. Evelyn did not fully believe her, but she wanted to. After they hung up, she cleaned the house with more force than the house required. She dusted the television stand, wiped the bathroom mirror, changed the sheets in the guest room, and carried the Christmas boxes from the hallway to the garage, one at a time, even though her back complained by the second trip. By afternoon, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. She was putting clean towels in the hall closet when the smoke alarm screamed. The sound cut through the house so sharply that Evelyn dropped the towel. For one frozen second, she could not place it. Then she hurried to the kitchen and saw the small saucepan on the stove, the one she had used to warm milk for oatmeal. The burner was still on. The milk had boiled over and burned in a brown ring beneath the pot. She turned the knob off with a shaking hand and stood there while the alarm kept screaming above her. "Stop it," she said, waving a dish towel under it. "Stop!" The house did not listen. The sound filled every room, bouncing off cabinets, the refrigerator, Thomas's empty chair, the notebook on the counter. When it finally stopped, the silence afterward felt almost worse. Evelyn opened the back door in the kitchen window. Hot Florida air pushed in, carrying the smell of wet grass and distant lawn fertilizer. She cleaned the stove carefully. Too carefully. She scrubbed the burner, rinsed the sponge, wiped the counter, and then scrubbed again, as if removing the stain could remove what had happened. But the notebook was still there. She opened it. Forgot burner while cleaning. Smoke alarm. No fire. Her pen hovered. Then she added, "Do not tell them before visit." The moment she wrote it, shame moved through her chest. Not because the burner had happened, though that frightened her. The shame came from deciding to hide it. She had spent 40 years telling families that hiding symptoms only made things harder. She had said those words in hospital rooms with kindness and confidence. Now she understood how easy it was to hide when telling the truth felt like opening the door to losing everything. On Saturday afternoon, Karen's rental car pulled into the driveway. Sophie got out first, taller than Evelyn remembered, wearing jeans, a gray hoodie, and the uncertain face of a girl caught between childhood and leaving. Karen followed, rubbing the back of her neck before reaching into the trunk for bags. Evelyn stood in the doorway and smiled the way mothers do when they are both happy and wounded. Sophie reached her first. "Grandma," she said, wrapping both arms around her. Evelyn held on longer than she meant to. Sophie did not pull away. Karen came up the walk with a careful smile. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, honey." They hugged, but there was a stiffness in it, a space left open between their shoulders. Inside, Sophie wandered into the kitchen and saw the notebook before Evelyn could move it. The blue cover lay half open beside the nurse mug. "Is this your list book?" Sophie asked. Evelyn crossed the kitchen quickly. "Something like that." Sophie looked at her, then at the notebook, then away. She was young, but not careless. She had heard the change in Evelyn's voice. Karen was setting her purse on a chair when a car door closed outside. Evelyn turned toward the front window. Michael was standing in the driveway with a small suitcase in one hand and a folder tucked under his arm. Not a big folder, not dramatic, just a slim manila folder, the kind people use when they wanted paper to look harmless. But Evelyn saw it. So did Sophie. And without thinking, Evelyn reached for the notebook and closed it. Michael came in with a kind of smile people use when they know the room is already tense. "Hey, Mom," he said. Evelyn kissed his cheek. He smelled faintly of airport coffee and cold air, even though Florida heat pressed against the doorway behind him. For a second, he was 10 years old again in her mind, coming in from Little League practice with grass stains on his knees, asking what was for dinner before he had even taken off his shoes. Then he stepped back and glanced around the house, not lovingly, assessing. Evelyn saw his eyes move to the ceiling near the old water stain, then to the hallway rug that curled slightly at one corner, then to the kitchen light that had flickered twice last month. He did not say anything, but the silence had a checklist inside it. Karen noticed too. "Michael," she said under her breath. "What?" "Don't." "I didn't say anything." "You don't have to." Sophie stood by the counter, watching them all like she had walked into the middle of a conversation that had started before she was born. Evelyn moved toward the stove. "I made chicken salad. There's iced tea." "Mom, you didn't have to cook," Karen said. "I know that." Michael set the manila folder on the kitchen table. Evelyn's eyes went to it and stayed there. He followed her gaze. "It's nothing final." "That seems to be the family phrase now." Michael's mouth tightened. "It's just information." "Information about what?" Karen gave him a look that said, "Not yet." But Michael was already opening the folder. "Some independent living communities near Clearwater. A couple of them have cottages, not apartments. You'd still have your own space. There's maintenance included, transportation, emergency call systems." "Michael," Karen said. "What? We came here to talk." Evelyn turned off the faucet, though she had not realized it was running. The sink was half full of lettuce leaves in cold water. Her hands were wet. She dried them slowly on a dish towel, buying herself a few seconds. Sophie looked at the folder, then at her grandmother. "Did Grandma ask for those?" she said. The question was quiet, but it changed the air in the room. Michael looked surprised. "We're just trying to show her options." "That's not what I asked." Karen closed her eyes for a second. Evelyn looked at Sophie, and something in her chest ached with gratitude and embarrassment at the same time. She did not want a 17-year-old defending her in her own kitchen, but she also could not remember the last time someone had asked such a simple question on her behalf. Michael leaned back in his chair. "Sophie, this is adult stuff." Sophie's face flushed. "She's an adult?" Nobody moved. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a golf cart passed slowly on the street, its little motor buzzing like a toy. The house smelled faintly of chicken salad, lemon cleaner, and the burned milk Evelyn had not fully managed to erase. Karen set her purse down. "Can we all just sit?" They sat at the kitchen table where Evelyn had once helped with homework, folded laundry, clipped coupons, and signed school permission slips. Thomas's chair stayed empty for a moment until Michael pulled it out and sat down in it. Evelyn noticed. So did Karen. Michael did not. He spread the papers neatly in front of him. Floor plans, monthly costs, a printed article about aging in place, a list of recent home sales in Evelyn's neighborhood. He had highlighted certain numbers in yellow. Evelyn stared at the yellow lines. "You came prepared," she said. "I didn't want to waste your time." Her laugh was small and sad. "That's one way to put it." Michael looked up. "Mom, I took time off work. I flew down here because I care." "I know you care." "Then why do you make it sound like I'm doing something wrong?" Evelyn folded her hands on the table. They looked older to her than they had that morning, the veins more raised, the skin thinner. A nurse's hands, still clean, still steady enough, but not young. Karen spoke softly. "We are worried about you being alone." "I know that too." "You keep saying you know, but you won't talk about what happens if things get worse." Evelyn looked at her daughter. "And you keep saying worse like it's already written down somewhere." Michael tapped the papers. "That's why we need a plan." Evelyn's eyes shifted to the blue notebook on the counter. Sophie saw it. Evelyn stood. "Mom," Karen said. Evelyn picked up the notebook and brought it to the table. She did not sit right away. She stood behind her chair, one hand on the back of it, the other resting on the notebook's cover. "This is my plan," she said. Michael's face softened again in that careful, worried way. "A notebook isn't a plan." "No."
"But it has something your papers don't."
"What's that?" "My words." Karen's eyes dropped. Evelyn opened the notebook. The pages made a soft, dry sound. She turned past grocery lists, medication notes, appointment reminders, small daily records of a life everyone else seemed to think was becoming too small to matter. Then she began to read. Tuesday, Michael sent house estimate before asking how I was. Michael shifted in Thomas's chair. Tuesday afternoon, Karen says places with people around, not a home. Not like that. Karen pressed her lips together. Wednesday, not sure if I took evening pill. Do not guess. At that, Michael looked up sharply. Karen's face changed. Evelyn kept reading before either of them could speak. Thursday, Michael said, "Not yet, emergency. We need to look at this. My house affects me first." Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. Thursday night, Michael and Karen called together. Already looked at places. Sophie sat very still. Evelyn turned one more page. Karen told Michael about Publix, says 10 minutes. Karen whispered, "Mom." Evelyn read the last line slowly. "They are worried I am disappearing, so they have started speaking like I am already gone." No one said anything. The kitchen that had held so many ordinary family noises became painfully quiet. No forks against plates. No school bags dropping by the door. No Thomas clearing his throat from the porch. Only the air conditioner clicking on, pushing cool air through vents that had been paid for, one paycheck at a time. Michael looked at the papers in front of him as if seeing them differently. Karen's eyes were wet now. Sophie was staring at her grandmother, not with pity, but with something stronger and harder to bear. Evelyn closed the notebook halfway. "I am not asking to live here forever," she said. "I am asking not to be moved out of my own life before I am gone." Michael swallowed. The pen in his hand rolled onto the table, tapped once against the folder, and stopped. For a long moment, nobody seemed to know what to do with the truth once it was sitting in the middle of the table. Michael looked at his mother, then at the papers he had brought, then back at the notebook. For the first time since he had walked in, he did not look prepared. The neat lines of his plan, the highlighted numbers, the careful monthly costs, all of it seemed too clean for the room they were in. Karen wiped under one eye with the back of her finger. "Mom, I didn't know you felt that way." Evelyn almost answered too quickly. "Of course you didn't. You never asked." But the sentence stayed behind her teeth. She was tired of winning tiny arguments that left everyone farther apart. "I didn't know how to say it without sounding ungrateful," Evelyn said. "Ungrateful," Michael repeated. "For your worry, your effort, your flights." "Your phone calls." She looked at the folder. "All those papers." Michael lowered his eyes. Sophie reached for her glass of iced tea but did not drink it. The ice had melted down to thin, cloudy shapes. Karen said, "We weren't trying to make decisions without you." Evelyn turned a page in the notebook, not because she needed to, but because touching it steadied her. "Maybe not at first." Michael leaned back in Thomas's chair. This time, Evelyn saw him notice where he was sitting. His face changed a little, and he pushed the chair back as if he had suddenly realized he had taken someone's place. "I talked to a senior living advisor," he said. Karen looked at him sharply. "Michael." "I did," he said, his voice quieter now. "I didn't sign anything. I didn't commit to anything. I just called." Evelyn nodded slowly. The words hurt, but not as much as she expected. Maybe because the bigger hurt had already arrived. "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael rubbed both hands over his face. He looked less like a consultant then, and more like a son who had not slept well in months. "Because I thought you'd shut down." "I might have." "I know." He looked at her. "And I didn't know what to do with that." Karen folded her arms, then unfolded them, restless with guilt. "I should have told you how scared I was after Publix. I made it about the house because that was easier than saying I was afraid I might lose you little by little." Evelyn looked at her daughter, and for a second, she saw the child Karen had been, trying so hard to do everything right that she could not admit when she was terrified. "You don't get to protect me by leaving me out," Evelyn said. Karen nodded. "I know." "No," Evelyn said softly. "You know it now." The room went quiet again, but this silence was different. It did not feel empty. It felt like everyone was finally standing in the same uncomfortable place. Then Evelyn took a breath and did the thing she had been most afraid to do. "I left the stove on yesterday." Michael's head lifted. Karen's hand moved to her mouth. "No fire," Evelyn said quickly. "Milk burned. Smoke alarm went off. I handled it." Sophie's eyes filled with worry. "Grandma, I also skipped a pill Wednesday because I couldn't remember if I'd taken it." Evelyn placed her palm on the notebook. "I wrote it down because that is what a careful person does. Not a helpless person, a careful one." Michael's face tightened, but he did not interrupt. "I am scared too," Evelyn said. "But every time I admit one thing, I'm afraid it'll become the reason you take 10 things." Karen whispered, "I'm sorry." Evelyn nodded once. She accepted it, but she did not rush to smooth everything over. That had been her habit for too long, making everyone else comfortable before she had finished bleeding. Michael gathered the papers slowly and slid them back into the folder. "What do you want?" The question was so simple that Evelyn did not answer right away. Outside, the afternoon sun moved across the driveway. The hibiscus near the mailbox bent slightly in the breeze. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked twice and stopped. "I want an evaluation," Evelyn said. A real one. Not guesses over the phone. Not fear dressed up as planning. Michael nodded. I want someone to look at the house and tell me what can be made safer. Grab bars, smoke detectors, whatever needs doing. She looked at him. You can help with that. I will. She turned to Karen. I want you to call me when you can actually talk. Not from the car, not while cooking dinner, not while answering school emails. Karen's chin trembled. Okay. And I want no decision about selling this house made without me sitting at the table. Sophie said softly, this table. Evelyn looked at her and smiled a little. Yes, this table. Michael placed the folder on the floor beside his chair, not on the table. It was a small gesture, but Evelyn saw it. For the next hour, they did something none of them had expected. They opened the notebook to a clean page, and Evelyn made them write. Not type, not email. Write. Karen wrote first, in hurried school office handwriting. Mom wants to stay in the house for now. Evelyn corrected her. Not wants, chooses. Karen crossed out the word and rewrote the sentence. Michael wrote next. No sale discussion without Mom present. Without Mom leading it, Evelyn said. Michael looked at her, then nodded and changed it. Sophie sat beside her grandmother and drew a small line under the words, as if making sure they stayed there. That evening, they did not fix the family. Nobody gave a speech. Nobody promised they would never hurt each other again. Michael still checked the hallway rug and mentioned fall risk, though he said it more carefully. Karen still looked tired. Evelyn still felt embarrassed when Sophie helped carry laundry from the dryer. But when they ate chicken salad at the kitchen table, Michael did not open the folder. Karen put her phone face down. Sophie asked Evelyn about the hospital years, and Evelyn told a story about a patient who hid candy in a tissue box after heart surgery. They laughed, not loudly, but enough to change the room. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Evelyn walked onto the screen porch alone. Thomas's chair was empty. The fan clicked above her. Across the street, Ruth's porch light glowed through the warm Florida dark. Evelyn held the blue notebook against her chest for a moment, then set it on the small table beside her, open to the page they had written together. The house was still too quiet. Her memory was still uncertain. The future had not become easy just because her children had finally listened. But the notebook was no longer hidden under a coffee mug. And for that night, in the house she had spent her life paying for, Evelyn did not feel moved out of her own life.